Mountains are just a part of my heart. I can't get enough of them. And this project has special meaning for me in more ways than one. My wife is an artist, and the design for this project was inspired by one of her original landscape paintings. This is the story of a 6-month journey and over 300 hours to build 2 cabinets. I'm selling one, but I'm keeping the other one for myself. I'm using a combination of my table saw and bandsaw to slice thick veneers out of solid hardwoods for this project. The primary wood I'm using is eucalyptus, but I'm also using cypress, jatoba, ribbon mahogany, and quilted maple. I'm using the term marquetry to describe the effect on the outside of this cabinet, but nothing I'm doing here actually resembles traditional marquetry techniques. Shout out to Bits & Bits Company for supplying me with this incredible spiral compression router bit. It really was the basis for the technique that this entire project relied heavily on, which is called template routing. This is the point in the project where I actually changed my design from a rectangular cabinet to one with curved sides. I'm using a method called kerf bending in 1/4-inch plywood for both the vacuum form as well as the actual walls of the cabinet. The kerfs that I've cut into the plywood are spaced 1/2 inch apart and allow it to bend smoothly. I covered my vacuum form with plastic laminate to create a non-stick surface for glue, but I also took the extra effort because I plan on using this for future projects. Two layers of kerf-cut plywood get glued together in the vacuum press to create the curved walls of the cabinet. All of the exposed edges of the plywood will need solid hardwood banding before the veneer is applied to the surface. I'm using this temporary kickstand to flush trim the solid edge banding safely and cleanly while the workpiece stands vertically on the router table. I'm joining the edges of the shop-made cypress veneer to make larger panels for the interior of the cabinet. I'm learning to use more craft paper to keep my vacuum bags clean from all the glue squeeze out. It also means that every time I take something out of the vacuum bag, it's like opening a birthday present. Every woodworking project seems to have one part in the middle that's just a little bit scary. This is one of those parts. And once again, it's my birthday. I created this table saw sled so I could cut the miters in the curved panels. Whenever I'm using epoxy, I try to use masking tape to keep squeeze out off of the workpiece. For the miter joints on these really weird curved panels, I decided to just use packing tape as my clamps. And it worked great. The top and bottom of the cabinets will be a plywood core lined with solid eucalyptus around the edges. And I'm creating more eucalyptus veneer to cover the surface of those pieces. I'm using my Shapeoko CNC to make another router template for the final shape. Just like before, most of the waste gets cut off on the bandsaw, and then I flush trim it to its final shape on the router table. It'll be easier to mortise and install these brass knife hinges now before I start assembling the cabinet. To avoid stripping out the soft brass screws, it's better to use a matching steel screw first to tap the holes. I had to modify the other side of the hinges to fit the angle on the side of the doors. At this point, I've applied the veneer to the inside faces of both the top and bottom parts of the cabinet, but the outer faces are still uncovered. Now you can see why I left off those outer veneers. I'll add them later to cover all the screw holes. With the case all glued up, I finally get to test the fit of the door. I wanted to try creating a secret hidden latch on the cabinet door that uses a magnet as a key. This is my prototype. For the working version, I'm using this bolt instead of a nail, and it'll slide into this little brass bushing. I needed to turn the magnetic key into something decorative, and it's times like this when I really wish I had a lathe. But you gotta work with what you got and get creative. Finally, it was time to install the outer veneers to the top and bottoms of the cabinet. The MDF is just to help even out the clamping pressure. I purposefully left the veneers a little oversized, and then just trimmed them flush on the router table. When you unlock the cabinet, the door opens extremely smoothly on those brass hinges, so I decided to make a really delicate little finger pull that wouldn't distract from the cabinet's design. I'm making another router template on the CNC for the cabinet legs. And after attaching that template to another piece of plywood, I cut off most of the waste on the bandsaw and then flush trim it on the router table so it's one solid piece. For narrow cabinet legs, I actually prefer laminating two pieces of wood together versus using one solid piece because I think it's stronger. And for something like this, you need a lot of clamping pressure spread out over a wide area. So instead of using a million clamps, I'm just using my impact driver and Torx head screws in all the areas that'll be cut away as waste later. And finally, I can use that same router template that I made for the legs and use it to flush trim them to their final shapes. At the last minute, I've decided to make the whole cabinet a little bit taller and add quilted maple feet to the bottom of the legs. I turned my drill press table sideways and attached a simple jig so I can drill straight and consistent holes in the bottom of each one of the curved legs. I have to do a lot of shaping on the legs to get to the profile I want in the end. So I'm doing as much of it as I can with various router bits so I can save time and get consistent results for all of the legs. To taper the legs, I'm making a simple drum sander sled with a scrap of plywood. I'm just raising one end of each leg and then temporarily attaching them to the sled with hot glue. The drum sander will consistently remove material from the raised end of each leg, creating a perfect taper. And then I'll flip them all over and do the other side. Now that the legs are tapered, I'm doing one more pass on the router table, but I use my random orbit sander to do the final shaping. Off camera, I built this miter jig for the joinery on the apron pieces that stretch between the legs. But I actually did all of that before I made the design change for the curved cabinet sides. So that means I need to add another piece of wood to the apron pieces so they'll be thick enough to cut the curves to match the sides of the cabinet. I cut the curve on the bandsaw and then just refine it with the oscillating belt sander. I also wanted a vertical curve on the underside of the apron pieces. So I used the offcuts from the last operation as a little sled for the now curved workpiece, so I could safely cut the next set of curves on the bandsaw. These are the miter keys that will reinforce the joinery on the apron. The corners of the apron have to be flat and just the right size for attaching the legs later. I want the base to attach and detach easily from the underside of the cabinet, so I'm using threaded inserts and stainless steel fasteners. These corner pieces will reinforce the miters on the apron even more and also help me attach the legs. I'm using epoxy to attach the legs, and the screws are just a temporary clamp until the epoxy hardens. Now that I've removed the metal screws, I can replace them with a wooden dowel. During the heat wave we had in August, I built up 6 coats of satin polyurethane over 3 days. A huge thank you to all of my supporters on Patreon for encouraging me to go out into the shop late at night after the kids are in bed and produce these videos. If you want to join the club, get access to my SketchUp files, t-shirts, stickers, and other merchandise, or see your name at the end of these videos, just find me on Patreon. See you later.